Hello, it's Blue Orange 22. Just a quick casual video today. Is the men's rights movement too one-sided? Do we respect the feminist perspective and do we listen to the other side? This is a common criticism I hear against the men's rights movement. And to be honest, this is something that I think happens almost everywhere when it comes to politics and society. Do people really appreciate the other side? Or do they only have like a black and white perspective of only seeing things from their point of view? Or do people appreciate the nuance of the other point of view? Do I think the men's rights movement is kind of closed-minded, or do I think that we respect other perspectives as well, including feminism? And I'm going to go ahead and say I actually do think that, at least myself, I would consider myself very much open to nuance and other perspectives. But I've been accused sometimes of seeing, all the time, I shouldn't say sometimes, and constantly over the years, of having a very one-sided black and white perspective and kind of ignoring the feminist point of view and only kind of seeing things in one direction. I was having I won't even say debate, I'll just say conversation a few days ago with two people who are, I would say, somewhat more feminist leading, one of them more so than the other. And we were talking about feminism and men's issues and kind of having sort of a debate about different things. And these are people that I would consider intelligent and well-meaning. And, these are people that I would consider personally, as friends. And so it was after a dinner party with some wine. So it wasn't exactly, a whole-on academic debate. But, a couple things came up that comes up very often where I was saying things about boys' education and men's health and men's issues that they were surprised by and they didn't know. For example, how prostate cancer kills more than breast cancer in the UK was something that I brought up that both of them were taken aback by. And they live in the UK and they didn't even know that. And a lot of times I find that people think I have a one-sided view or a black and white perspective on something, and I don't consider the other side, when in fact it's because I understand the feminist perspective. And this isn't specific to those two people. This has happened dozens, if not hundreds of times over the last literally decade of me having these kinds of debates where feminists will recommend, but you should really read this book and, you should really maybe widen your perspective and understand different points of view. And they'll send me a book that I've already read. Or sometimes people will send me, like we're debating an issue, whether it's the wage gap, whether it's education, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's homelessness, whether it's whatever it is. Have had debates with feminists, and this has happened, when I tell you, literally over 100 times over the past decade, literally 100 times over the past decade. I'll be sent an article that not only have I read, but I've actually done a video on debunking. So it's not that I'm not aware of other sides or perspectives, because I typically tend to be very aware. And a lot of times it's because I'm aware of something, because I've researched that perspective, because I've read that article, because I've read that book, that I have a seemingly absolutist black and white view. So sometimes it's because I've looked at another perspective or another argument that I seem so absolutist in my opinion. I completely reject this particular argument because I understand it, because I've read it. Sometimes people send me articles or books that not only don't change my mind, but the more I look into it, I go, yeah, that's exactly why I don't agree with this. Because you might send me an article that somebody wrote, but what you don't know is that I read an article that same author wrote 2 years ago where they said the opposite thing, or they contradict themselves. Or you may send me a piece of information, or you may send me a graph or statistical data showing this percent of men or this percent of women or whatever fact it is. But what you may not know is that I've been looking at this issue for years now, and I know exactly how this kind of data and this kind of statistic is manipulated and why. I understand the figure you're talking about. I understand the 15% X, Y, and Z or whatever it is you're talking about, but I didn't just read that article to get that 15%. I've known where that 15% came from for a long time. So if you do watch my channel on a regular basis, I do think I do a fairly good job of trying to be as objective as possible when it comes to stats, when it comes to data. And I always double check everything. And when I make a video, I make a claim. Some things you'll notice, whenever I criticize feminists or a feminist organization or a feminist individual, I almost always have a direct quote from a direct source. What I don't do is I don't go to some right-wing blog, or I don't go to some Alex Jones website and then quote someone else quoting someone else. I go for direct sources, and I do this quite a lot. And I like to challenge myself. The things you don't see me do on this channel, and sometimes the reason why it takes so many days, if not weeks, in between videos, is because I go on a lot of different sources, okay? And I have a lot of alt accounts on different social media sites where people think I'm a trusted feminist. So I get a lot of first-hand sources that I wouldn't usually get. I spend a lot of time researching the stuff that I do. I don't just pull stuff out of thin air and then add my own conjecture to it and post it on the internet. So I'm very careful about where I get my sources and where I get my data. And I almost always like to use two sources primarily. One is anything that is .gov. Whenever I'm trying to find stats on homelessness, the wage gap, prostate cancer survival rates, I always go for .gov sites first, whether it's .gov or .gov UK. If I can find official government sources, I always like that the most, okay? Number two is .edu. Whenever I can find a study or a paper that came directly from a university is always a good thing. But be careful, because that's not always good, because you can have someone who is a doctor, a PhD in sociology, and they can still be opinionated. You can be a renowned scientist and still have opinions, and wrong opinions. You can win a Nobel Prize and be completely wrong. So academia is not necessarily untainted. And thirdly, I try and find things from sources that would be considered more left-leaning / pro-feminist. And I don't like to phrase that as if left-leaning means anti-MRA, thus MRA means pro-right-leaning, because that's not the way the MRA is at all. The MRM, I should say. The men's rights movement is not a, quote, right-wing movement. But it does seem that media today does seem to slant where so-called left-wing media seems to be on the feminist side and right-wing media tends to be on the men's rights side. And I hate that that's the way it is, because it shouldn't be. I've done videos before on how I don't like American media at all. I don't like Fox. I don't like CNN. I don't like The Guardian. I don't like the Daily Mail, even though I have used all four of those sources on this video, on this channel at various times, because what else are you going to do? But, so that's kind of a message on that. So do I think the men's rights movement is one-sided? Do I think that I am one-sided? Yes and no. I do think I take a side, but when I do take a side, I take so carefully. And I absolutely, I only take a strong absolutist stance when I'm very sure about what I'm opposing. And as you guys know, almost every single one of my videos ends with me saying the following, right? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Because I know a lot of you disagree with me, and that's fine. And there's a 0% chance that my channel is 100% accurate. There's a 100% chance that at some point in this channel, I have said things that aren't true. Because I have over 200 videos. It's simply not possible that I've been 100% accurate and correct 200 plus times in a row. But I do think, and I will give myself credit, I do try and be as accurate as I can be. And while this is not an objective news channel, and some people, I think I've mentioned this before, maybe I haven't, I get sometimes emails or messages saying, hey man, like, you're my primary source of news, or you're my primary source of, no, this is not a news channel. This is purely an opinion channel. Okay, this is not a news channel. Okay, so this is not a channel that you could source on an academic paper. I would be humbled if you did. It'd be appreciated if you did. But, I hate when people say, oh, it's such a humbling experience to be rewarded. It should be the opposite of that. Why would it be humbling? But anyway, but the point is, this is not a objective news source. This is a subjective channel with my opinions. Now, I do think I do a very good job of explaining why I have the opinions that I have and providing the links to those opinions in the description below. Which in this video, there are no links, because not that kind of video. But anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below.